Hey, how you guys doing? It's been a minute since I've done a rework video. Uh, but I wanted to touch up on Hydroid. Personally, I don't think Hydroid's good. I think he's very bland, and anything that he is, kinda okay at, gets completely superseded by any other frame in the game. I think Necros has the looting, and then when it comes to CC, you got a list of frames. Invulnerability, I mean, this is his invulnerability, and it's slower than Nyx, so he doesn't even really have that going for him. His scale is pretty bad. Um, and this is what it's like to be Hydroid. This is This is what you do. You grab enemies like this one at a time, which is incredibly slow for the kind of game Warframe is. You cast your one, and then you just hope that your one hits your incredibly small puddle. Yeah. If you're playing with teammates, yeah, I didn't even kill him. If you're playing with teammates, you have them shoot into your puddle. You typically while you're camping, but that isn't a very. Not only is it a kind of counterproductive playstyle and kind of bores people to tears with how sitting around doing nothing is, that this game already suffers from when it comes to like incredibly powerful frames that can just nuke entire rooms at low levels by pressing a single button. Um, I don't want that. I don't want that for any frame. I actually prefer frames where you integrate pretty much all of the abilities and you're always using them. Um, it can range from frames like Nidus to frames like Saren, Equinox, uh, frames that use all of their abilities. And I want to do that for Hydroid. So I had a few ideas uh, that I think would make Hydroid a hell of a lot better. And let's get into it. So, for starters, the one, this little area that it covers, I think should scale off your secondary weapons and its mods, element, and fire rate, and multi-shot and all that stuff, depending on what's coming down. Um, Mods purely, uh, not what the weapon's capable of just what the mods on it. I think that you could do a lot with that. Hemorrhage, being able to put your impacts into slash, and uh, you know, damage multipliers and all that stuff would make his one incredibly useful whenever you're in your three. The three's base range needs to be up. Just straight and simple. It's way too small for the kind of game Warframe is. Warframe throws hundreds and hundreds of enemies at you, and if you're gonna be a slow puddle, you might as well be a slow ocean. Um, Another one, which is why I mean base range is fine and all that, but let's get into his three, right? Or not his three, his two. Oh, I have larva on my two. His two is a wave that you just kind of move with. Let me show you, just in case you're a brand new player. So this is his two. It's mobility used, and it technically is supposed to have a use where if you're in your three, you can zoop enemies up into it, but it does not work very well, especially when it comes to Like, on a flat plane like that, it works fine. Sort of. If it's 50-50 that those guys will actually stay inside your wave and end up in your puddle. So, my change... I mean, we can keep this. For mobility purposes, if you want to be a wave that moves forward, we can keep it, and that should be its tap ability. But, what I was thinking with Hydroid, and let's go back to this, is that he would have waves coming around him at a base range of 10 meters, I think. Pretty similar to Nidus's larva. And it would zoop enemies into your puddle, right? Like, it'd be more like Mag's pull, not exactly like this, obviously. But yeah, now enemies are all in your puddle. You didn't have to do anything to, like, you didn't have to target them one at a time. It's just a AoE zoop into your puddle that you can cast while you're in your puddle, and it's thematic with Hydroid's playstyle. And it worked. It would work, in my opinion. And so there you go, fixing his 3. His 4 is where I think it's the most interesting. So, obviously, anyone who plays Hydroid usually uses him for loot. This ability is strictly used for loot, and it does it the worst. Korra is better at it in this type of way, and Necros is the king of loot, obviously. To fix that, one, you need the augment as well. So, with the augment, I feel that the changes should be enemies trapped inside these tentacles while they're getting whipped around like that. And it would only... well, basically, they're getting loot shaken out of them when the tentacles are whipping them around like that. So it gives you... I'm not saying that it will do it the entire duration. It would work as if, like, how Korra and Necros do it. Actually, I would say more like Ivara. One time, any time that they're in it, it doesn't stack, it doesn't restack on enemies that have been caught multiple times. It's just one and done, really, shakes the loot out of them, and then you can kill them, right? And that, I feel like that would be enough, but let's say you want to build Hydroid for, murder. So what I think that these tentacles should do is, when they're in here, like this, grouped up, that it should act somewhat to like Zephyr's tornadoes. So you're using your secondary mod scaling, would be able to completely annihilate enemies that were trapped inside of these tentacles, and enemies that are being slammed down into your puddle would also be taking the damage. Kind of like giving Hydroid a purpose. He's a area lockdown. No enemies would be able to get past his puddle. Like, I don't know, besides Xmas units, obviously, and units. I hope that eventually we get to a point in Warframe where there are, like, I guess there are jetpacking enemies, but they're not very common, but enemies that mainly stay in the air that kind of try to avoid stuff like this. Like enemies that would fly over like Gara's wall and stuff like that. Enemies should adapt to Warframe's abilities at some point to make this game a little bit more interesting. Yeah, so I think those changes would actually be very beneficial towards the Hydroid type players. It doesn't really change what the main goal of Hydroid is. He wants to be in his puddle where he's safe. He wants enemies to be in his puddle. And then he wants to kill enemies in his puddle and he wants to get extra loot while he's in his puddle. I think that enemies that the loot is shaken out of them are collected through the puddle, so you can have sustainability. Like you're able to stay in your puddle without having to, come back up to collect the energy, go right back down. It's kind of clunky. But you would want to come back up, mostly to move, but also to collect regular loot drops. It would be a dream to see Hydroid rework like this. I don't think it would be detrimental in any way towards what people expect of Hydroid. I know there are pretty unique builds. And by pretty unique, I mean if you subsume Embers 1 on Hydroid and collect them into your puddle, you can cast Embers 1 over and over and over again in your puddle, killing them with heat procs. But it's still not useful. I mean, like, what's stopping me from just using the Kuva Brahma to obliterate way more enemies than this puddle could ever hope to in a much quicker time? That's kind of it, really. Let me know if you think that this would be a good rework. Me personally, I think it would be a dream. I like Hydroid. I like the way he looks. I don't like the way he plays. I barely play this Warframe as is since his last rework, pretty much. But he has a cool skin, and water's cool. Being a captain is cool. Having a Kraken monster is cool. I mean, like, it's just not useful. And I know that, like, 150 enemies, heavy corrupted gunners, not everyone sees that. Not everybody goes around and loves to fight super tanky enemies or whatever. But I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, those enemies aren't really anything. Steel Path is way tankier, and even though these are the heaviest units around, for this faction anyways, every Warframe should be able to hold their own against levels like these. I don't think that there should be a definitive best Warframe, which right now, I mean, we all know who it is. We don't have to say her. We don't have to say her name. But, yeah. That's my idea. Hope someone at DE may see this, or another YouTuber who's just browsing and, getting off ideas from other people who appreciate the game. See you around.